Hello, my name is Jacqueline Laman. I am your reporter for today. The topic that I will report is all about principles of animation, which is still part of 2D animation. There are 12 principles of animations. Each principle is vital to the animation process, so let's dig deeper into each one. Number one is squash and stretch, anticipation, staging, straight ahead action, and pose to pose. Follow through and overlapping action, is in, is out, arc, secondary action, timing, exaggeration, solid drawing, and appeal. The number one principle of animation is squash and stretch. Squash and stretch is debatably the most fundamental principle. Look at what happens when a ball hits the ground. The force of the motion squashes the ball flat, but because an object needs to maintain its volume, it also widens on impact. This effect gives animation an elastic life-like quality because although it may not seem like it, squash and stretch is all around you. All shapes are distorted in some way or another. When acted upon by an outside force, it's just harder to see in real life. Squash and stretch imitates that and exaggerates it to create some fun. Let's take a look of the example of squash and stretch. When the letters spring from the ground, they elongate to show the impression of speed. Conversely, the letters squash horizontally when they come into contact with the ground. This conveys a sense of weight in each letter. The number two principles of animation is anticipation. Anticipation is the preparation for the main action. The player striking the soccer ball would be the main action, and the follow through of the leg is well, the follow through. Let's take a look at an example of anticipation in animation from Spot. So this is the example of anticipation. Notice how the progression of action operates in this scene. We first see the woman as she is standing on the box. She then bends her knees in anticipation of what's about to happen and springs into action by leaping from the ground up into the air. Number three is staging. Staging is one of the most overlooked principles. It directs the audience attention towards the most important elements in a scene in a way that effectively advances the story. This is one of the example of staging. The clip in the example, the placement of the character within the scene, allows us to quickly follow his actions and give us a good sense of the physical layout. To number four principles of animation is straight ahead and pose to pose. These are the two ways of drawing animation. Straight ahead action is where you draw each frame of an action one after another as you go along. With pose to pose, you draw the extremes. That is the beginning and end drawings of action. Then you can go on to the middle frame and start to fill in the frames in between. Pose to pose gives you more control over the action. Straight ahead action is less planned and therefore more fresh and surprising. Mastering both techniques and combining them is the best approach to being a successful animator because then you can get both structure and spontaneity. Number five is follow through and overlapping. When a moving object such as person comes to a stop, parts might continue to move in the same direction because of the force of forward momentum. These parts might be hair, clothing, jaws, or jiggling flesh of an overweight person. This is where you can see follow through and overlapping action. Follow through can also be described the movement of the primary element though. If you land in a couch after a jump before standing up straight, that's a follow through. Take a look of this example. Watch the sleeves of the Chief Jedi's cloth when he swings his lightsaber. They move with the momentum of the action, but when it's over, the sleeves continue to go before settling to a stop. Number 6 is slow in and slow out, or what we call is out and is in. When you start your car, you don't get up to 60 meters per hour right away. It takes a little while to accelerate and reach a steady speed. In animation speak, we would call this an is out. Likewise, if you brake, you're not going to come to a full stop right away, unless you crashed into a tree or something. You step on the pedal and decelerate over a few seconds until you are at standstill. Animators call this an eased in. In other words, carefully controlling the changing speeds of objects creates an animation that has a superior believability. Take a look of the example of is in and is out. In this clip, the woman raises her arm slowly at first, but it picks up speed as the motion continues. The is in, is out technique works to make the action more fluid and realistic. Number 7 is arcs. Life doesn't move in straight lines, and neither should animation. Most living beings, including humans, move in circular paths called arcs. Arcs operate along a curved trajectory that adds the illusion of life to an animated object in action. Without arcs, your animation would be stiff and mechanical. In other words, the speed and timing of an arc are crucial. Sometimes an arc is so fast that it blurs beyond recognition. This is called an animation smear, but that's a topic for another time. The example shown, the man passes the cash along from one person to another by reaching his arms across the frame. At first glance, it may be hard to see the arcs happening, but when it's outlined on the second time around, it's quite obvious. The fluid arcing motion of the arms adds grace to the animation. The number 8 principle of animation is secondary action. Secondary actions are gestures that support the main action to add more dimension to character animation. They can give more personality and insight to what the character is doing or thinking. In this example, a deer takes a bite of a leaf sprayed with deer pro repellent. The primary action is the deer spitting out the leaf when he realizes it's no good. The secondary action is the slight tail wag that shows the deer's relief to have the awful taste out of his mouth. Number 9 is timing. Timing is about where on a timeline you put each frame of action. To see what this means in action, let's take a look at the classic animator exercise. In this example, notice that at the top of each bounce, the balls are packed closer together. That is because the ball is slowing down as it reaches the peak of the bounce. As the ball falls from its peak and it accelerates, the spacing starts become wider. Notice also how many drawings there are in each bounce. As the momentum of the ball diminishes, the bounces become shorter and more frequent. For example, the number of frames in each bounce decreased. Number 10 is exaggeration. Sometimes more is more. Exaggeration presents a character's feature and actions in an extreme form for a comedic or dramatic effect. This can include distortions in facial features, body types, and expressions, but also the character's movement. Exaggeration is also a great way for an animator to increase the appeal of a character and enhance the storytelling. In this example, the deer turns into a mini tornado of destruction to show how much damage deer can do to a yard. This is clearly an exaggeration for the sake of humor and getting the point across, as well as being a homage to the Tasmanian Devil of Looney Tunes fame. The scene then turns to the young couple watching in horror as the deer ruins their shrubbery. Both of their eyes are stretched wide in bewilderment, and the man's jaw is practically on the floor. This exaggeration of their facial feature is way more effective than a slight frown or a small gasp might be. So number 11 of principles of animation is solid drawings. Solid drawing is all about making sure that animated forms feel like they're in three-dimensional space. This is the example of solid drawing. This character designed by Robert Kopicki for Proscenium is a good example of solid drawing. Kopicki is creating a character that will live through various iterations of history in the video. He starts by defining the volume of the character, which he describes in this character sheet at a teardrop bowling pin. Then he adds different clothing, hair, and accessories to the character to take him to various parts of history. The last but not the least principles of animation is appeal. Appeal can be hard to quantify because everyone has a different standard. That said, you can give your character a better chance of being appealing by making them attractive to look at. Play around with different shapes and proportions of characters to keep things fresh. Enlarging the most defining feature of a character can go a long way to giving the character personality. Strive for a good balance between detail and simplicity. This is the example of appeal. People remember real, interesting, and engaging characters. Animated characters should be pleasing to look at and have a charismatic aspect to them. This even applies to the antagonist of the story. So, those were the 12 principles of animation. You now know the basic roadmap to create fundamentally sound animation. So, get to work. Thanks for watching.